My phone rang, and when I answered, the woman slammed the mascara tube on my counter so hard the testers jumped. "I want my money back, right now." I snapped on a fresh pair of black gloves and picked up the tube. The wand was wet. The receipt next to it was dated 42 days ago, and she was already breathing through her nose like a bull. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Store policy is 30 days, and used products only come back within 14. I can't process this one." "Used? I tried it once. I can offer you a replacement once my manager gets here." She leaned over the counter. "Get her, now." I pressed the call button, and my mouth went dry. The last girl at this counter got fired for arguing with a customer, and I was 3 weeks in. A line was building behind her. 2 women with baskets, a dad holding a gift card, a girl maybe 14 with her phone already up, red dot on. The woman pointed a finger an inch from my face. "You think you're better than me? You're 19 working a register. You're nothing. You're a child playing dress up in those stupid black gloves." I kept my hands flat on the counter so she couldn't see them shaking. "Ma'am, I'm following the policy. I don't want a replacement. I want my $14. Her voice cracked on the word 14. She slapped the mascara tube and it skidded toward me. "Do you know who I am? I will have your job by Monday." The girl raised her phone higher. Denise walked up, calm, name tag straight, hands clasped. "Hi, I'm Denise. What's going on?" The woman launched in. The mascara, the wand, how I'd been rude, how I'd rolled my eyes, how I needed to be retrained or removed. Denise listened to all of it without moving. Then she picked up the mascara, checked the receipt, and set the tube back down in front of me, not the customer. "She quoted you the policy correctly. We can't take this back. And if you speak to my associate like that again, I'll ask you to leave the store." The woman's mouth opened and nothing came out. She snatched her receipt and walked out, leaving the mascara on my counter. Denise turned to me. "Take your 15. I peeled off the stupid black gloves and set them on the counter next to the tube she'd left behind, and the girl with the phone grinned at me on my way past. "That was awesome. I'm posting this." The $14 never left my register. The woman slammed. The first package had my name on it, but the warning inside was, "Gemma shoved me off the balance beam when I was in the middle of a cartwheel, causing a few cracked ribs." That was Gemma. As the daughter of our gymnastics coach, Gemma could do anything she wanted, and no one could say anything about it, and she had just picked me as her next target to bully. The next day, I was in the middle of flipping from one bar to the next, and Gemma grabbed my leg and yanked hard. I slipped and fell, missing the mat under me, and instead hitting the concrete floor hard. My head slammed into the ground, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. My entire gymnastics class was surrounding me, but no one would tell the coach that his daughter Gemma was the one to do this to me. Gemma leaned over my hospital bed. "Tell my dad. He won't believe you anyway." She smirked and walked out. That's when I came up with a brilliant plan. Right before our next competition, I put itching cream all over the inside of Gemma's gymnastics suit. During the competition, I watched her fidget, itching herself all over. Our coach told her multiple times to stop, but she couldn't. Then it was her turn for the balance beam. She started off perfectly, but then she had an itch and she slipped on the balance beam. She fell so hard we could hear her ribs crack. When she glanced up, blood was pouring out of her nose. Our eyes met across the gym, and I smirked. She glanced away and never bothered me again. Gemma shoved me off the balance. Me and my daughter were bowling when she hit a strike with her tennis ball. Mila spun around with both arms in the air. "Mommy, I told you I'd hit a strike." I shot out of my seat cheering because her hands can't grip a real bowling ball, so this is the only way she gets to play. That's when the woman from lane 6 slammed her own ball onto the rack and marched over, jabbing a finger at our scoreboard. "That doesn't count. That's not a regulation ball. It's cheating, and it's a disgrace to my lanes." But I wasn't going to let some bowling fan ruin this for my daughter. I told her the manager approved it, but she talked over me. 11 years I've bowled in the league here, and I'm not finishing my best game next to a rigged scoreboard. Wipe it. Nobody was wiping anything, and I stood up, heart pounding. My daughter has muscular dystrophy. Her therapist gave her that ball 2 years ago to learn to grip again, and the doctors say by next season she won't be able to throw anything at all. This is the last year she has to play. The lanes around us went quiet, but she didn't blink. If your daughter's disabled, she should be at home or in the hospital, not on a bowling league lane making it everyone else's problem. I was extremely angry, but Mila was about to hit another strike, so I ignored the woman and cheered, "One more strike, baby, and that's your first score of 100. Half the alley watched her raise the ball, and mid-swing, the woman crossed onto our lane and ripped it out of my daughter's fingers. No ball, no problem. She hurled it down the gutter, and I watched Mila's name roll into the dark under the pins. My little girl just stared at her empty hands with tears in her eyes. I scooped Mila up, and she buried her face in my neck, and I looked the woman dead in the eyes. "So, I have a question for you. Isn't crossing onto an active lane against the rules?" Her smirk wiped off her face. The manager took out a remote control and wiped her score off the screen. She's right. Game's voided. Security walked her out past her own league table, still screaming about her score, and nobody stood up. And a minute later, the manager came out from behind the pins and set it in Mila's hands, name facing up. She wound up and threw it down the lane, and all 10 pins exploded. I picked her up and spun her around. "That one counted, baby." The woman's name came off the high scoreboard that weekend, and a photo of my daughter hangs there instead. Me and my daughter. I was walking out of Target with my new Stanley when I heard my sister scream, "Give me that cup right now." She was sprinting toward me in pajamas and one slipper, and my mom was speed walking behind her in a bathrobe. My sister reached for the cup, so I pulled it behind my back. No, I waited in line since 5 a.m. for this. You already have 20 of them, and I have 0, so I deserve this one. My mom caught up, breathing hard. Honey, can you just let your sister have this one? I held the cup against my chest. No, I waited in a line of 40 people for this. My sister got both hands on it and yanked. I pulled back and we started playing tug of war. My mom jumped in trying to pry my fingers off and then shoved me backwards. Just give it to her. Mom yanked the cup toward her, so I yanked back. And the second she let go, it flew straight to my nose. I heard a crunch and my hands flew up to my face while the cup clattered to the ground. My sister dove for it while red poured down my face. My sister picked up the Stanley and immediately started crying because there was a dent. My mom snapped at me. Now look what you did. You ruined it because you refused to share. I bought it, I said, but she ignored me. Instead, she wrapped her arm around my sister and comforted her as they walked to the car. I watched them drive off with my Stanley while I was still bleeding in the parking lot, feeling worthless. I was walking out of Target with my new... Mr. Harding stopped the entire gym class mid-burpee and looked at his Apple Watch. Olivia has been in the bathroom for 20 minutes. That is completely unacceptable and disrespectful to everyone's time. When she walked back into the gym, he stepped toward her with his chest puffed out. Would you like to explain to the whole class why your bathroom break was more important than their workout? Olivia stared at the floor. Sorry, I got my period. He crossed his arms. I have 3 sisters, and none of them ever needed that much time. Sit down and make up the time after school. She sat on the bleachers and cried for the rest of class. When I sat down at lunch, the whole table was already talking about it. Chloe looked up with the most dangerous smile I had ever seen. If he wants to use his sisters as proof he understands us, we can use that exact same logic right back on him. The next day, he flopped into his chair after dodgeball groaning. I'm so tired, a girl called out. My dad builds houses 10 hours a day, and I have never heard him make that sound. He jumped back up. Lose the attitude. The next week, he was out for 3 days because he was sick, and when he got back, he announced it to everyone in the hallway. I had the most awful cold of my life. I laughed loud enough for him to hear. You were out 3 whole days for a cold? My brother had the same thing and still went to work. He scowled at me. Everyone's body is different and some people need more time to get better. I put my hand on my heart. Oh, so you do understand that all bodies work differently. So having a brother doesn't make me an expert on how all men get sick. Just like my best friend and I were sitting live in her podcast studio when her viewer count hit 500,000. I was getting nervous and tried to stick to the script, but Audrey's eyes were going wild with excitement. She threw out the paper she was reading from and grabbed a purple notebook out of her purse. I gasped. It was my diary. What the hell are you doing? She was already flipping it open. Dear diary, I think I'm in love with the guy who fixes the printers at work. Today he walked past and I took a deep breath. I signed the foster papers and brought home the 6-year-old boy nobody else wanted. At first, John helped me with the dishes and always said please and thank you, and I couldn't understand why he'd been given back by 7 different families. But then one morning, I looked in the mirror and saw my hair had been chopped off. I came downstairs and John was eating cereal, while a pair of scissors laid next to him. I asked him, did he cut my hair? And he shook his head. Of course not. Why would I do that when you're so nice? I wanted to believe him, because over the next few days, John helped clean the house, hugged me before bed, and thanked me for not hitting him like his other foster parents. I almost let the hair go, until one day I saw spray paint all over my walls. I called John in, and when he saw the wall, his eyes lit up. That's so cool. How did you do that? I was in disbelief and said, I know you did it, but he shook his head. I swear I didn't. I swear. I clenched my jaw, and he instantly cowered like he was expecting to be struck. Just please, not my back. My last parents hurt me so bad there. I felt terrible and went into my room wondering what to do. John slid a note under the door. If I did something wrong, please tell me and I'll leave. Over the next few days, he kept his distance. He still helped with cleaning, but didn't laugh as much. Then I found a raw egg smashed on my TV. That was it. I called the agency and said I couldn't do this. I was sending him back tonight. Right as I got off the phone, John came down with his bag packed. Tears were running down his face. It's okay. Nobody ever wants me anyway. I don't know why. Let's just go. But something about how he said it made me stop. We got in the car, but instead of the foster agency, we drove to the hospital. Why are we here? I didn't answer him and just brought him inside and asked to run some tests. The doctor came back and called us both in. He asked John if he ever remembers doing anything bad. John shook his head. The doctor turned the screen and showed John footage from 15 minutes ago. John in the lobby flipping a tray. John started crying. I don't remember that. I don't remember that. The doctor said when John's mother was 8 months pregnant with him, she got in a bad car accident. John survived, but the impact damaged his frontal lobe. Apparently, the damage to John's brain gave him dissociative intermittent explosive disorder, aka chaotic, violent outbursts John simply doesn't remember. I instantly realized John wasn't bad. He was the sweetest kid ever, who'd been getting repeatedly punished for something he couldn't control. John was sobbing. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. During a flight, our plane started dipping, and a flight attendant immediately immediately rushed down our aisle. The pilot has collapsed. We're going down. Does anyone have any flying experience? Every passenger began screaming, and I looked over at my 12-year-old son, blissfully playing his flight simulator with noise-canceling headphones. I pulled off his headphones and saw the model of the plane he was flying. It was the same as this one. I stood up with shaking legs. My son can do it. He can land this plane. He looked at me. I can? I knelt down and took his hands, but a businessman shot out of his seat. I'm not letting some kid with a Nintendo crash this plane into the ground, but his face turned white as we nosedived further, and the crew rushed us to the cockpit. My son climbed into the seat and pulled on the headset, shaking. I told him, "You got this, sweetheart. If anyone can do it, it's you." Air traffic control came over the radio. "Do you copy?" "Yes, copy." They paused as they realized they were guiding a child. "Okay, pull the thrust levers back to idle, set flaps to 30. But my son's hands were moving before they finished. Flaps 30, idle, set. The runway came and an alarm blared as the whole plane shook. I gripped my son's shoulder. "You've got this, just like your game." But his eyes stayed locked ahead, his hands perfectly steady. The wheels slammed. The plane shuddered. The cabin screamed. We rolled to a dead stop. Everyone erupted into sobbing and cheering. The businessman sat with his face in his hands, crying. My son calmly took off the headset and turned to me. "That was a little rough on the flare. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 difficulty based on my game." During a flight, I felt myself get my first period while I was wearing white jeans, and I knew I had to do something. I shot my hand up so fast my elbow cracked the desk. "Mrs. Harmon, can I please use the bathroom? It's an, lady emergency." She didn't even turn around from the board. "I don't care if you're giving birth. No one interrupts my class for the bathroom. You'll stay in your seat." Savannah, the most popular girl in school, glanced back at me, and I was sure she was already picking out my new nickname to bully me with. I had no idea how I was going to get myself out of class without anyone making fun of me. I quickly glanced in my bag, but when I saw I had nothing to cover myself with, I pressed into my chair and prayed nobody would look. The boys in the back were laughing, but the girls had gone dead quiet. And when the teacher saw me fidgeting with my hands with tears in my eyes, she smiled even harder. "Since you have so much energy for interruptions, come up and show us the answer to number 6. My knees started wobbling. She wanted me to stand up so I could be humiliated by everyone. She clicked her fingers. Now, I stood up on shaking knees, and the laughter cut off into one sharp gasp, because now everyone could see it. My eyes darted around the room because I was desperate to find someone who could help. That's when Savannah, the most popular girl in school, smiled and stood up. She pulled off her jacket, the white one that cost more than my whole closet, and tied it around my waist in front of the whole class. Then she turned to Mrs. Harmon. "You did this to me at the start of the year. You made me sit there for 2 hours. I won't let you do it to her too." Mrs. Harmon's face went blotchy red as she slammed her marker on the tray. "Sit down right now or it's detention." Savannah laced her fingers through mine and looked her dead in the eye. "Then give all of us detention." One by one, every girl in that classroom stood up. Mrs. Harmon was still yelling about suspensions as 20 girls walked me out the door. Right before we walked out, I stopped at the door and turned around. "Sorry for interrupting your class." The principal immediately noticed and rushed over, and Savannah told him everything in the hallway. Within the hour, the principal was walking Mrs. Harmon out of the same room that she wouldn't let me out of. After school, I tried to give Savannah the jacket back. She pushed it back into my hands. "Keep it. Pass it on when it's someone else's turn." I felt myself get my first period while I was wearing white jeans, and I knew I had to do something. My twin sister begged to. My boyfriend Lauren pulled my new dress out of my hands and threw it in the trash. "You can't wear something like that out. You want every man in the room staring at you?" I changed without saying anything because I had learned not to argue. He spent an hour getting ready, carefully putting his hair that he had been growing for 3 years in a stupid man bun and shaping his eyebrows in the mirror. He loved being noticed, and he could not stand when anyone noticed me. We walked into the party and everything was fine until a family friend put his hand on my arm and said, "You look absolutely beautiful tonight." Lauren smiled at him, but his hand squeezed my arm. "We need to talk when we get home." I knew I was in for it then. As soon as we got home, he dragged me to the bathroom, pinned me to the floor, and started shaving my head. "Now men will stop looking at you." When I started crying, he laughed. "God, you're so ugly when you cry." He finished, walked out, and fell asleep on the couch with one arm behind his head like nothing had happened. I sat on the bathroom floor and slid my hand over my head. Just skin. Something in me snapped. I picked up my phone, sent my best friend Elena a photo, and typed one line. "He's going to pay for this." She wrote back in seconds. "Stay there." She arrived a few minutes later, and I let her in without making a sound. She reached into her bag and handed me a pair of clippers. I nodded. She jumped on him without hesitating, pinning his legs and locking both his wrists in one motion. His eyes flew open. He saw the clippers in my hand and screamed, "Don't you dare touch my hair. I have an interview in the morning." But I turned the clippers on anyway. "You are nothing without me," he said. "Nobody is going to want you looking like this." I held his eyes and started with the man bun. He thrashed and Elena held firm. "The interview," he said, his voice going small. "I need that job." The eyebrows went next. He went completely still, the kind of still that comes when someone finally realizes nobody in the room is afraid of them anymore. I dropped the clippers on his chest. "We're done. I don't want to be with someone who looks like that." Elena got off him, and I stopped at the door. "At least now it's not your business if men stare in my direction." We walked out, but he didn't follow because the first thing he did was run to the mirror. My boyfriend Lauren pulled my twin sister. I was going door to My twin sister begged to swap places with her for the family vacation, but she wouldn't tell me why. It didn't make sense. We had the exact same looks, but Ginny was the favorite, getting the hugs, the presents on birthdays, while I got the, "Oh, you're here too." So when she showed up begging me to go as her, I didn't understand it at all, but still said fine, because for once, I wanted to feel loved. I flew out and walked into the lobby as Ginny, and the second mom saw me, she pulled me into the tightest hug. "There's my girl. I missed you so much, Ginny." She'd never hugged me like that. The whole first day, everyone was warm, laughing at my jokes and listening to my opinion like it mattered. I knew it was fake, but it felt so good, I could have cried. Until the second day by the pool, my aunt brought up Jacob, Ginny's ex-husband with an inheritance of $15 million. "Have you heard from him at all? Such a shame you two broke up." I felt myself turn red, and I had to bite my tongue, because the last time I saw Jacob, Ginny had bruises around her neck. I told her no, I hadn't heard from him. But then at dinner, my mom said, "I just want you to be happy, sweetheart. I remember how happy Jacob made you." She said it like Jacob wasn't the man who tried to strangle Ginny at her own birthday party. I excused myself and privately texted Ginny what they were saying, but she didn't reply. On the third day, my aunt cornered me and flat out said, "Jacob's been going to therapy. He's changed and so much calmer now. You should give him a second chance." I just smiled and walked away, my jaw clenched. Then I texted Ginny again, updating her on everything, but again, she never replied. That night, we were at the lobby when my mom pulled me aside, smiling. "We have a surprise for you back at your room." We walked back and she opened my door. "Go on in, sweetie. We set this up just for you." I walked in and a man came out from behind a curtain with his eyes locked onto me. My blood went cold and I turned to walk away, but Mom was blocking me and beaming. "You two can finally talk it out. Think of your family, sweetie." She closed the door, and I was now alone with Jacob. He stepped closer. "I've been looking for you." I backed up, but he grabbed my arm and shoved me into the wall. "You're coming home with me tonight." He smiled. My voice was shaking, but I replied, "I'm not her. I'm not Ginny. I'm her twin." He laughed. "You think I'm stupid?" He squeezed my wrist harder, and I felt it crack, so I screamed in pain. "I'm not Ginny. Look at my phone, please." He didn't move and reached into my pocket, but when he saw photos of me with my boyfriend, he completely lost it. "Is this who you replaced me with?" He slapped me and grabbed my arm even tighter. I begged him to keep scrolling, and he reluctantly did. He immediately saw I wasn't Ginny, and his face went from rage to completely blank. "Me and your mom need to have a talk." He let go of me and walked out. I couldn't stop shaking and picked up my phone, and that's when I saw Ginny had replied an hour ago. "I'm sorry for what's about to happen. I used your want to be loved, but I couldn't risk him finding me." Then another text came in right after from my mom. "Help!" My twin sister begged to I was going door to door selling Girl Scout cookies my grandpa and couldn't get a single person to buy them. My grandpa, seeing that I was upset, asked, "What do you win if you sell the most cookies?" I frowned. "A trip to Disney World, but it doesn't seem like I'm gonna win." That's when his eyes lit up. "I've never been to Disney World." A big grin appeared on his face. "I'm going to be the best Girl Scout and sell the most cookies." I laughed. "Silly grandpa. Grandpas can't be Girl Scouts." He bent down and patted my head. "Let's find out." The next morning, Grandpa showed up at my door wearing my spare Girl Scout vest. I was mortified. He had a clipboard with every street in the neighborhood mapped out and a stack of sticky notes to track sales. He went door to door, and I watched him work. He'd compliment every person's garden, ask about their kids, tell a quick joke, and before they knew it, they were buying 4 boxes. By the end of the first day, he smiled. "I outsold you 3-1 boxes today." I couldn't believe it. By the end of the week, he was waking up at 6 a.m. hitting doors before I was even awake. He started teaching me his techniques. You gotta make them laugh first. Nobody says no to someone who made them laugh. That day, my sales doubled because of him. Then, at a troop meeting, one of the Girl Scouts got in his face. "You're like 100 years old. Go back to the retirement home, Grandpa." Grandpa didn't even blink. "Tell your parents I said thanks for the sale." The girl's eyes went wide and started crying. My grandpa and I were laughing together. Then the day of the award ceremony came to reveal who sold the most boxes. The troop leader grabbed the mic. "This year's top seller, with the most cookies sold in our troop's history." Every girl leaned forward. "Mr. Clunky." The room went silent. My grandpa jumped up and walked to the front smiling. The troop leader shook his hand. "We'd love to have you back next year." Then the next week, Grandpa and I went to Disney World together. At Disney World, he had the biggest smile I'd ever seen, and I realized being a Girl Scout gave him life's purpose he didn't have before. He turned to me. "Joe from the retirement home just signed up for Girl Scouts. Next year is gonna be a war." I was going door to door selling Girl Scout cookies with my grandpa and couldn't get a Every morning, my dad set a 5th plate at our kitchen table for someone who never came. When I was 6, I asked him who it was for. He smiled and said he liked a full table. Mom called it one of his quirks. My brother said it was probably for Bigfoot, and Dad laughed along with him. I never asked again. After he passed last March, we still didn't know. At the funeral, a woman stepped out of the line. "My name is Claire. I'm your half-sister." She held up a photograph of our kitchen table. 4 plates full, 1 empty. She flipped it over. On the back, in Dad's handwriting, hiding? I always saved you a seat. My knees buckled and I caught the back of a folding chair. My mom told me he walked away when I was 4. He didn't. He sent me a birthday gift every year for 30 years, and my mom hid them all in a closet. I only found them after she died last year. She pulled a small wrapped box out of her purse. I brought one. She unwrapped it with shaking hands. Inside was a heart-shaped locket with a tag that said, "For your 9th birthday." Claire's voice cracked. There are 29 more. Dolls, a graduation card, a wedding gift just in case. He didn't miss a single year. Did you ever talk to him? Once, 2 weeks before he died. He said he always knew I'd find them one day. The next morning, I went down to the kitchen and set 5 plates. Mom's, my brother's, mine, and one for Claire when she came over. The empty plate at the head was Dad's now. I'll always save him a seat. Every morning, my dad set a 5th plate at our kitchen table for someone who never came. When I was 6, I asked him who it was for. He smiled and said he liked a full I was sitting in court when the cop on the other end held up a ticket and told the judge he'd caught me driving on the highway while texting with my left hand. My lawyer looked at me and we both smiled because this cop was about to become a laughingstock. The judge asked me, "Were you texting and driving with your left hand?" And when I replied no, the officer put his hand on his badge. She's lying under oath. I saw her clear as day. Phone in her left hand, right hand on the wheel. I'd stake my badge on it. I was giggling when the judge asked, "And what did you do about it?" I flagged her down and cuffed her on the spot, the cop replied, crossing his arms, but she somehow kept getting her left hand out of the handcuffs, so I drove her to jail myself. The judge leaned forward. "Did you ever figure out how she got the handcuffs off?" "No, I didn't, Your Honor, but that's reason to add resisting arrest and give her the maximum sentence." The judge turned to my lawyer. "What's your defense?" My lawyer stood up. "So you claim she was texting with her left hand?" "Yes, her left hand." That's when I stood up and raised my left arm over the table, trying not to laugh, and held it up. It ended at my forearm. I couldn't hold a phone in my left hand if I wanted to. I rest my case. The cop's face drained of color. "Let me get this right. You cuffed her, drove her to jail, wondered how she kept slipping out of handcuffs, and never noticed she has no left hand?" The cop trembled, and the judge looked back at me. "Were you using your phone, ma'am?" I raised my stump. "Hand to God, Your Honor. No." I was sitting in court when I was munching on my 5th bag of Doritos when my mom dropped me off at Fat Camp. "I'm sorry, honey, but you need help." I sighed and turned to wave goodbye, but she was already gone. And the second I walked through the chain-link gate, my 400-pound counselor padlocked it and pointed at the sign by the entrance. "Nobody leaves until you're fixed." I knew I had to find a way out. I stumbled towards the line of other people my age, and that's when the 400-pound camp counselor started to speak. He stepped in front of me and pointed his chunky finger at me. "You're the worst case I've ever seen. You won't make it out of here for another year." But I was going to do anything to escape. And that night at 2 a.m., I heard the counselor slip into the forest, and I followed him to find out if he was doing something I could expose him for. Through the tree, I saw him surrounded by buckets of fried chicken, a stack of pizza slices that were even taller than him, and dozens of cans of soda. I almost burst out laughing because all I had to do to escape was tell everyone about his big secret. But right when he went to take a sip, I stepped on a branch and he immediately shot up, so I ran away before he could see me. The next morning, while everyone was being weighed and we ate our usual breakfast of a singular egg and a piece of lettuce, I started whispering about what I saw, and that's when the counselor wobbled over. I tried to cover my mouth with my hand, but it was too late. He yanked me out of my seat and crossed my name off his clipboard in front of the whole mess hall. "Liars don't graduate," he said. "You just earned another 30 days stuck here." He leaned down to get in my face, close enough that I could smell the fried chicken on his breath, and I knew I had to expose him for the fatty he really is. "You said I'm the worst case you've ever seen? Well, take one to know one." I reached up and ripped the grease-stained bag out of his jacket. It split open at my feet, and fast food spilled everywhere. Every starving fat kid slowly turned to face him. We all slowly walked in a trance towards the burgers, fries, chicken wings, all of it half-eaten. All of our stomachs rumbled at the same time, and the counselor looked nervous. I can explain, but we were too hungry to listen anymore. One boy ripped open his jacket, and a carton of large McDonald's fries fell out of the lining. The more we dug, the more we found, and by the end of the week, we got the camp shut down, and my mom came to pick me up with a fresh bag of Doritos. I was munching on my 5th bag. My blood ran cold as the red and blue flashing lights came up behind me. I pulled over and saw the cop getting out of his car and aggressively marching towards my window, his hand on his holster. My 8-year-old son sat in the back with his soccer cleats on, smiling with no clue of what's happening, and I just prayed he wouldn't have to witness anything bad. The cop knocked on my window and told me he'd pulled me over on suspicion. I was confused because I'd been going the speed limit and asked, "What did I do wrong, officer?" But he ignored me and instead stared at my son in the back seat. "Is this child yours, ma'am?" His tone was accusatory, and my eyes popped in disbelief. I slowly pulled out my son's adoption paperwork, but he barely glanced at it, and his eyes narrowed onto me as he leaned closer past the window. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady and told him, "I'm taking my son to soccer practice." He hummed and said, "Sure," then demanded my license and registration. I nodded and slowly reached toward my glove compartment, but the second I opened it, he pulled his gun and aimed directly at my head. "Freeze! Hands above your head." I completely froze in place as the barrel was inches from my temple. I stammered I was just getting what he asked for, and that's when I heard sobbing. nothing. My son was crying in the back. A gun was pointed at his mother, and all he could do was sit and watch. My whole body shook because I knew one wrong move, and my son would watch me die over nothing. The cop's eyes flicked to the back seat, and his face changed when he saw my son crying. He gripped the gun tighter and looked at the open glove compartment, seeing nothing but registration papers. His jaw clenched, and he slowly lowered the gun. Be more careful with sudden movements. I'm letting you off with a warning this time. He walked back to his cruiser while my legs trembled. I pulled away with my hands still shaking on the wheel, while my son hyperventilated in the back. But a minute down the road, he told me to pull over. I did, and he gave me his phone. Mom, I recorded all of that. I pressed play and saw the cop's face clear as day as he drew his gun on me. My son said, I've heard it's good to record the cops. So I did it and hid my phone. All I could see was dollar signs as I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. My blood ran cold as for 10 years, my mom made us disappear every time someone knocked on the door. I was 17 when I finally opened it. Every knock, mom hissed, vanish, and we had 20 seconds. My sister and I tore through the house, cutting every lamp and the TV while a woman called through the mail slot. Margaret, I know you're in there, Margaret. We'd drop flat until mom's low whistle meant all clear. Then she'd give us a salute. The CIA wishes they had us. For a long time, I believed her. Then I started keeping a list of the things that didn't line up. When I was 9, mom told us a sick woman from her old job had latched onto our family. Vanishing was how we stayed safe. It made me proud, like we were always one step ahead of her. By 11, the woman outside was saying something about an account, about 1994, about money owed. I whispered, is she trying to rob us? Mom's hand shot over my mouth, her eyes flicking to the door. At 13, I snuck to the window while mom wasn't looking and parted the blinds. A gray-haired woman in a knit vest, glasses hanging off a beaded chain. That's the stalker? The voice outside getting more annoyed. I just need a minute of your time. It's about the book, Margaret. I can see the car in the driveway. I know you're there. I was 17 when the knock came again. Margaret, it's been 30 years. Mom hissed, vanish, and bolted for the back room. I didn't move. I'm done with this. I opened the door. The woman was holding a crumpled slip of paper. Oh, hello. Is your mom around? I'm with the public library. Your mother borrowed a book back in 1994 and never brought it back. The fine comes to $3.60. I took the slip. Mom's name at the top. Below it, the title, Savage Surrender. I dropped it on the counter. Dad took one look and lost it, wheezing into his sleeve. Mom crept out, read it, went straight to the bookshelf, slid out a paperback with a shirtless man clutching a swooning woman on the cover, killed every light in the room, and dropped behind the couch. She whispered, tell her Margaret moved away. For 10 years, my mom made us disappear every time someone. We'd driven 4 hours to the Oregon coast.